y'all? Welcome back to the Worthy Her podcast. I am your host, Sabrina Gray, and we are back with another episode. Listen, y'all, today I am finally stepping into a new, I was going to say new era because that's the cool kids are saying, but we're stepping into a new dynamic here, which is I'm finally able to have guests on, and it just wouldn't be right if my first guest wasn't who my first guest is. Okay, amen. I'm pausing for everybody to say amen. Okay, perfect. I heard your amen. I love that. I love the agreement. We're here. So, my first guest today, I'm going to introduce her correctly, and then I'm going to tell y'all who she is to me. I'm going to let y'all know who she is to everybody, and then I'm going to tell y'all who she is to me. So, today we have the world renowned Kendra Taul, and she is an online brand developer, an educator, and she is the powerhouse behind Social Docs, which is a creative agency that blends branding with biblical wisdom. Amen. Listen, I'm going to put this down because I'm going to tell y'all who she is to me. Yes, Kendra has been all of those things to me, absolutely. But when I say this is my best friend, I mean, look up in the dictionary and look up best friend. Don't look in the Urban Dictionary because I don't know what that one's going to say. But best friend, I'm talking, we fight together, we war together, we pray together. She has walked with me through many seasons. Even when I didn't know I needed her, she was right there pulling up with prayer and everything. And so I'm super excited that she is here with me. Hey, girl.
Hey, best. Hello. I'm so excited to be on the Worthy Her podcast.
It only took us a little bit of time. The people
Listen,
been waiting.
I'm excited to be here. I mean, we've been talking about this for years. So
I
it's just
know.
like surreal being here with you. I just love it. Thank you for inviting me. I love it.
You know what? I don't think I realized that
Yeah.
until this very moment. My emotions are not about to hit already. We are just starting. Oh,
3 seconds in.
for 30 seconds, I got no tissue. I'm just thinking about that. You were
Yeah.
really the inception of this podcast. That's probably not a word. If it isn't, don't quote me. The like when I used to sit around and talk about it in 2020 when we'd be on the phone and I'm like, I'm gonna have a podcast. I'm gonna have a podcast. And so to finally be here, and I think through every y'all, okay, listen, pause. For my birthday, I think I turned 30. Did I turn 30? For my 30th birthday, I'm gonna upload this somewhere here. Kendra's gift to me was literally, do you remember this? Your
Yeah.
gift to me was the all of it was like podcast, it was a full meal deal of podcast, what would you call it?
Templates.
Temp templates. Wow.
Yeah.
Trying to give it a big word. I'm like
But it was like
museum
just a
of
digital suite of just like how you like if you needed help with marketing or design, I made some Canva templates for you because I just felt like the Lord was like, this is what she needs for this particular birthday.
I don't even know why. I'm finna go find them. Y'all. Oh, thank
Absolutely.
you, Father, for this moment. Okay,
Yeah.
so today, y'all, I brought Kendra on for multiple reasons. This will not be the first or last time that y'all see her. But today in
I'm gonna be a
specific,
friend of the pod. A friend of the pod. We're best
me,
friends, but when people say friend of the pod, that means like a continual guest. Like
it's given I'm getting a shirt.
we'll be back. She will
I'm
be
getting her
back.
shirt. What? It's
Merch
giving merch.
out.
Speaking of merch. All right.
Listen, because I wore your first merch like all the time. Every time
I
you would see me, oh,
know.
that's my shirt. Yeah, because it's my favorite sweater. That's why.
You're coming back.
Coming
Okay,
back.
so y'all already know the deal here on the Worthy Her podcast. I got my best friend here. Well, I got my best friend here, and then my other best friend, my notes. The reason that me and Kendra, I wanted us to have this conversation because I wanted to talk about a topic that I don't know is talked about enough in general or in the Christian circle, especially, where we talk about the topic of idolatry. And so we're going to talk about idolatry and friendship, which there's episodes that we're going to talk about separately so that you have a full understanding of what idolatry is. And then my personal relationship with friendships, separate from this one. But I knew that it was necessary to bring this because I think the moment me and Kendra discovered that there was idolatry in the midst of our friendship, it changed everything. And I don't know how long ago was that? I don't even remember. It wasn't that long ago.
Summer
In the summer?
2024.
Yeah, that's what, so it wasn't that long ago, but it changed the dynamic of the way that we interact with each other. It changed everything. And so, all right. So, Kendra, I think before we get started into the conversation heavy, we probably should tell the people how we met. Do you
Definitely.
remember how
Of course.
we met? I love this.
I at the time was going to a church called The Gathering. Was it The Gathering Place, or I
Together.
don't know exactly what the title of the
Y'all
church
gathered.
was. It was a gathering, okay? And so they would do like these worship nights, or maybe they just had church on Saturdays. And at the time, their structure was to eat before they got into like worship and got into, the thick of the service. And while we were eating, you walk in, and like it wasn't long between like you walking in the room when we were eating to when like you sitting directly in front of me. And the first thing you said to me, because I was like, when you walked in, I was like, who is that girl? Like, because you could tell you just were super vibrant. Like you were talking to everybody. You gave your baby up. Like, so I was like, okay, she's around family. Who else? Because it was a new space for me. So I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, another black girl. Like, I was
Y'all
like,
know we in Seattle. You gotta
hey,
look for us.
you know what I mean? Like that's literally what my thoughts were. And then you sat directly in front of me and you were like, when I walked in, I knew like we're gonna connect on something. And now that I know you, that's very on brand for you. Cause you like the minute you meet people, you already know that you want to connect to them because you're a connector. But like for me particularly, like I just felt like it was a moment. Like you said that, but it was a moment. And
Wow.
so yeah, we didn't really talk much. We were trying to talk, but people kept walking up to you, taking Zion at the time. He was a baby.
He was tiny.
And he was little. And
Hmm.
so we talked, who are you? How are you? I don't really remember our conversation a whole lot. I just remember like the introduction, like that's the part that stands out to me the most. And then I remember we went along with the service,
Hmm.
and after altar call, because I thought I saw you getting touched by the Lord. What do? I hug people. And I walked up to you and tried to give you a hug, and your face
Jesus.
was like, why are you touching me? And I was like, oh, I think I did something wrong. So I just stopped and then I went back to my seat. We exchanged numbers or whatever, but
Mm.
that's literally what I remember about that night. Like you were processing a moment with the Lord. Now I know. And
Mm.
your face at the time was like, I think the first time that I just felt reserved in our friend, like in our connection. Like
Yeah.
I was like, I think I did something wrong in that moment, and I probably shouldn't have done that. Like I think I disregarded the boundary. I don't even know what happened, but I just wanted
Yeah.
to give you a hug.
It's so funny because I don't remember that moment. I remember it because you tell me it, but I
Yeah,
remember I
you
remember
were in a
walking
different
in.
place. Like I don't even. It was altar call. Like it was a
Yeah,
thing.
I don't even. Oh, I do remember. I do remember. I do remember it because there was a word from the thing there that I didn't agree with that had came to me in the moment. It's all coming back to me. I think I was just so then I remember leaving feeling super exposed and uncovered. And that
Wow.
was my first time going into a space because I went with my mom.
Yes.
I had went there with my mom because they were looking for churches, and so it was just like a church that she was trying. And at that time, ooh Lord, Sabrina, at that time, I ain't go to no other churches, baby. And my church, and that's it. Not hard. That's it. We didn't do nothing else. So the fact that I had already felt weird going into another space, even though I knew the pastors of that house and had known them for a long time, I
Yes.
still felt so uncomfortable and so weird about it. What I remember about us meeting, though, I can't remember if I'm still trying to remember if the pastor of the house at the time, she came to me and told me like she wanted me to connect with you, like she remember like there was a connection point. I do remember that she wanted me to meet you, but I
Right.
also remember the what I remember from that conversation, because at that time, y'all didn't know my girl was multifaceted. At that time you were doing hair, you were braiding,
Yeah.
and we talked about you being a hairstylist at that time, or like
Oh
you were a
my
braider or
gosh,
whatever.
that's
And so
crazy.
that was like a connect, because I was like, well, what do you do? That's my I'm working on decorum, because that's my first question. Everybody, so what you do? I don't know what to say. But I
Yeah, yeah.
remember seeing you and I remember seeing Kevin, and I remember being like, there's something here. And I was uncomfortable with the there's something here, only because I didn't hang around people anywhere close to my age at the time, not even a little bit. So I was like, okay, she's clearly around my age because I'm looking at you and Kevin. But there was just something about seeing y'all together that I was
Yeah.
like, it was like an answer to prayer that I didn't, a prayer I prayed, but didn't know if I wanted to receive it in the time it was coming,
Yeah,
because
because
I was like,
we were both married. So
yes, we
you
were
said
both
you was
married.
my husband. Philip was at the worship night, was he? Or no, you were
No, it
with.
was just me and my mom in Zion.
Okay,
Yep.
yes, but I knew that you were married because you told me
Yeah.
that you were married.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, oh, like, because I did the same thing then
Yeah.
at that time. Like, oh, a couple, like, you're married? Oh, how long? And at the time, I had only been married for, I think, like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we were at 3, because I think because y'all are at year 9. We're at year 10.
Yes, yes,
You're at year 10 this year.
yes.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
at year
So
10 in 2026.
okay. Yeah. So I have you by 2 years.
Yes.
So I remember that we were it was still similar around the same time. So I
Yeah.
do remember that. Okay. So we meet where I'm still trying to figure out. Okay. So we meet, and then what I remember is I'm trying to. I just y'all gonna hear all about this in the friendship episode. I was not a natural friend. Okay. I remember trying to be friends. I remember connecting, but I remember like, okay, she came to my house, mm, and I gave you that book.
I think you were trying to do like what people do in church when it's like, let's go out for coffee and let's
Oh
do
yeah,
the
very Seattle.
connection thing. But it
Yeah.
was like, but what are we actually doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
are we just like gonna do the coffee thing, or are we actually trying to do life
Good.
together? Are we trying to
Yeah.
connect on a deeper level? I think that's because, like, even me, I like, because the pastor at the time of the house, she was like, you need to connect with Sabrina. Like, y'all would be great as friends. And I was like, okay, like, let's connect, let's
Wow.
get it. Like, I was excited. I was really anticipating it. And it just felt like my anticipations of like what I wanted it to be because of a lot of my own like preconceived expectations on what I wanted connection and friendship and women and all these things to be. I mean, I was so different then because I was
Yeah.
very open
Yeah.
to just meeting people, connecting with them. You can come to my house, you could eat my food, like vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so when we connected, like at the time you had a home salon and
Mm-hmm.
you invited me to just come to your house and
Wow.
at the time, I mean I can't remember the details of the conversation because it was so long ago, but we just talked about life and business and we you hand me that boundaries book and you were like, "Yeah, I don't do friendship with people that don't have boundaries. So I'm going to give you this book."
Y'all, I
And
kept
I
them
was
boundary books on deck.
like,
I would order 10, no lie, bro, for 3 years. I ordered 10.
oh,
I always kept at least 10 boundary books on me at
yeah.
any given time. And I would just hand them out because it impacted my life so well. But like, who does that?
But it's crazy because me now, if a friend were to do that or a beginning friend, I would be like, wow, like thank you for thinking of me this way. Maybe not the delivery of it, but I
Mm,
appreciate your idea on like wanting to me to like grow in the space of boundaries. Because at the time, I sucked at boundaries, like sucked at it.
I feel like that's what I remember that made me nervous is I
Yeah.
remember I think we were sitting at Panera Bread. Was it at Panera Bread? We were sitting somewhere. I could visually
Panera
see
bread,
this.
yes.
And I remember I can't remember if you told me I was mean then. I know you thought I was mean. I think we talked about it later because I was which I in 100% fairness, I was mean. Um I thought it was boundaries. I didn't have decorum at the time. I just thought like telling the truth was just better than lying. And I remember being like, everybody was sister, brother. I was like, she got all these people around her. And it made me so nervous. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this, dog. Like, but I knew there was always something back here that I knew I could not fully do this. So there was never a full like, oh, I can just sever this and be like, whatever. I knew that there was a connection here, but I remember that scared me so much because
Yeah.
Sabrina in that space was so sheltered. And so I was like, oh, this is too many people. And what I had seen previous of people that resembled that, it just made me so uncomfortable. And I remember talking to you that day about it. And I remember watching your face as I was talking. And I
Yeah.
remember being like, well, this is just who I am. Like, I got in the car, like, well,
Yeah.
but really, to be fair, y'all, in real life, though, like, not kind at all. Let's make this very clear
Yeah.
that I was not kind at all with the any of that. My first discovery of boundaries, it was very just rigid, super, super rigid. So I didn't want anyone in. And
It
it
felt
felt
more
like that.
judgmental
Yes,
more than
100%.
anything. I don't even think I can like I now looking back, I think I was feeling more judged about the way
Mm-hmm.
that I was operating my life at that time, more than like I didn't feel this like it didn't feel like you were sharing from a place of what you just communicated to me like no, this like something about this doesn't make me it don't like it doesn't make me feel well because of like we didn't
Yeah.
communicate that way
Yeah.
until later on in our friendship.
Way
We
later.
literally discovered that we could not exist in our friendship without vulnerability because there were
Whew.
so many things you were feeling, so many things I'm feeling as prophetic women.
Mm-hmm.
When you are in relationships with prophetic women, you like there's so many things that are processing in your mind and that you have to openly talk about or the enemy will use what you're feeling
Man.
as an identity that you become and now you think that your friend is being weird or funny or like
Yep. Yep.
you just don't like me or whatever and there was a lot around friendship as a whole around you as a whole that you
Mm-hmm.
were navigating at that time
Yeah.
that I wasn't let into
Mm-hmm.
yet because you were just meeting me.
Yeah.
So from the outskirts, when you're used to cutting people off, you're like, nope, this ain't gonna work because you got too many people in your life. You're this, you're that. On the outside looking in, you're trying to decide who I am by what you see. And
Yeah.
we had to become deeper so that you could be like, oh no, actually, it's this, and this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I left that Panera Bread session with you. Like, yeah, this probably isn't gonna work. Like our friendship probably, yeah, like
Yeah.
nah.
This
She
ain't it.
the way that she communicates the way that she I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it because it just doesn't feel like we connect really. Like we
Yeah.
might
It
know how
didn't.
to say all the things, we might know what to talk about, and it probably on the outside looks like we probably should be friends,
Mm-hmm.
but when we're sitting with each other, it don't feel like it. Like
Yeah.
something's off, and what I'm recognizing now is what was off was us our guard. Like we were both guarded in our own
Super.
way,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to trying to connect but not really connecting in the points that we really should be, which is let me come with my heart. Like and I'm not saying you have to put everything out there, but you were like completely guarded at that time with me.
Yeah.
Like there was no connection.
That's what I'm about to say. I don't think that you came in that manner at first. I think that you
No,
were
I didn't.
very
I was guarded.
genuinely open to building a relationship. And
Oh, yeah,
I feel like my posture, I'm not made you shrink. It made you guard yourself because of the
for
way I
sure.
responded. Because I remember we had a conversation and you talked about kind of how people had done you in previous seasons or something. I was a reminder of like how people talk to you or treat or something like that. And I
Wow.
talked to you
Yeah.
very, I talked down to you. I remember you telling me that like you're talking
Wow.
down to me, not like talking to me. And I didn't realize that because at the time I was a product of environment. And so I'm
Coaching,
talking to you the way
mentors.
that they talk to me and
Wow.
thinking like, okay, well, even though I didn't like it, and this is the hello, even though you didn't like it, I didn't like when
Yeah.
people talk to me like
Yeah.
that. And I was like, I don't want to be that way. I didn't know how to be anything other than that. And I didn't have until this is the thing about like God and like relationships and where your character develops in relationship because this relationship required it required a gentler side of me.
Mm,
This is my perspective. I'm going to say it. This is my perspective, and then I'll
mm,
let you speak to it. I feel like
yeah.
it required a gentler, more vulnerable side of me, and it charged that side of me. And I think it charged the side of you to know who can come in and who deserves to have the access to your life. Because when I would look at it, it was I remember because I remember the conversation at my house. If I don't remember
Okay.
anything, I remember the conversation at our house, my house,
Wow.
and the reason I remember it is because I remember the level of when I knew I was like, okay, I don't, at that time, I was like, she must just be like, I see her like a sister because friend was a very intimate word at
Yeah.
the time. So I was like, I
Yeah.
must see her like a sister because I started to watch how you were treated. I
Mm,
started to watch what I felt like
yeah.
was, I'm trying to choose my words wisely. So if I say this and I need to cut it out, you can tell me.
No, it's for
Um,
good. For good.
um, felt like perversion of your gift because I would see, I'm like, there's so much in her and it's being utilized, but like, I'm like, yo, she is dynamic. Like I always saw how big you were. And I remember the
Well,
conversation
that's
in
the
my
side of our friendship. Not to cut you off. I'm
no,
sorry.
it's fine. It's okay. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's the side of our friendship that we always have connected on
Yes.
was function, gifting.
1,000,000%.
It was always like business or
Yes.
creativity. Like I think for me, that's what kept me coming back to that space with you
Hmm.
in friendship was how well we connected in like creativity and building and
Yeah.
launching because I didn't have any friends in business at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that I was really being called to business, and you in that way were always like encouraging. You were
Hmm.
always like it was easy for you to be a coach. I think it was hard for you to be a
To be a
friend.
friend. Yes. And I think because if I look at back at like
Yeah.
setting, if I look back at setting, like that conversation was pivotal because I remember what I felt in my heart that I didn't know how to communicate. I'm older now, I
Yeah.
have more wisdom, and I've walked with the Lord
Yeah.
longer
Wow.
now to recognize how to bring my heart forth where it's not so aggressive. And that's the word I use because that's what it was. I
Yeah.
Please don't at me and say don't call yourself aggressive. I was aggressive. I was
Yeah.
extremely aggressive in my like what felt like not mama bear, but like, no, bro, there's so much inside of her. And I wanted that to like I wanted to protect it, but I've never been in a setting where I felt like that in friendship ever. So it was like I just I only went to what I knew. So I went right to coaching, leading, because in every setting that I was in at the time, there wasn't many peer. I didn't do peer relationships well at all. And the women I did do peer relationship with, like Renicia, Antoinette, who were super close, they were older than me. So it always made it a little bit easier. I never knew how to do relationship well across. But I feel like in that setting, I knew that I felt like there is so much inside of her, and now I feel protective of it because I know what it is to I know what it is to walk in it and feel like someone or something is holding me into a smaller space. And so I think that in that dynamic, my heart's intention, my intent was
Yes.
for you not to have to deal with it in that the same way. The hurt that I felt, like I didn't want you to deal with that part of it. I had no idea how to communicate it, so everything was just like don't let them and don't do this and and they don't, and it was always very aggressive. I feel from my perspective it felt like I was
Yeah.
always very aggressive in my tone.
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of like it's interesting because there was a time when I would probably know how to like connect how I felt very easily.
Mhm.
But like even thinking about it right now, like God brought me through this process in my friendships where he told me to release the record. And so even like thinking back on it, I can't even
I love that for me.
like I once did pull it up fast. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah. You got to
thinking about
think.
like the way that you approach me. I think our communication styles were just so different.
Mhm.
And we had to learn how to communicate with each other. At the time, I wasn't as vocal about the way that I felt, or I was not, we didn't like if I felt something, you usually would have to come to me and be like, "Did I say that wrong? Like was that
Mhm.
wrong?" I saw that your face changed because I would say more with like my face and like
Yeah.
my person than I would say out loud. And
Mhm.
you're the friendship that taught me how to speak up about what I was actually feeling and advocate because I was committed to not like cutting you off or walking away.
Mhm.
And so through that, I had to
Yes.
learn how to talk through my emotions the same way that you had to learn. It was just different,
A different type
like
of
a
learning.
different type of learning.
Yeah.
You had to learn how to let me in. I had to learn how to communicate and be more honest about what I was experiencing. Like, no, it's okay to have conflicts in your friendship.
Yeah.
It's okay that you saw it differently, she saw it differently. It's okay to even say, "Hey, the way that you said that, it hurt my feelings."
Yeah.
Like the way that that was communicated hurt me. And it's not like, you were the only one doing things. I think there was moments in even my own like the way that I was responding after I just felt like we just weren't getting it right cuz I
Mhm.
just don't feel like we really invited Holy Spirit into our friendship until
Girl, at
recently.
all.
So we were still very much like trying to do the typical like, oh yeah, let's connect, let's get together, let's do movies, let's go shopping, let's do this, let's do that. When really, because of the nature of how we're supposed to walk together,
Yeah.
the Lord wanted us to be more spiritually, um, I would say more spiritually aware in our friendship.
Yeah.
And I think this should happen in friendships, period,
In
if you're a
general.
Christian. But I think that we were just learning what kind of friends we were to each other. Because when God reveals that someone's your best friend,
Mhm.
you can approach it like you see other best friends. You can approach it the way that you want your best friendship to be. You can approach it the way that you like, like the fantasy of your expectation.
Yeah.
And I think that because we were in our 20s, like
Mhm.
I was in the beginning of my 20s when I met
Right.
you.
Mhm.
And so, like,
Yeah, and I was like
me
mid. I was
then and me now, two different approaches. You now
100%
and you then,
way
two
different.
different approaches. And so, the beauty of like the way that we've had to travel to learn that, I think, is really the testament of God.
I do. Yeah, I agree. Okay. I was gonna ask you, but I feel like you kind of answered it. What the biggest what you think when you think about our friendship, what the biggest lesson God has taught you about relationships?
I think similar to the way that I've learned in marriage,
Mhm.
I've learned in my friendship with
Yeah.
you. It is that you cannot control anyone,
Right.
and your friends are not yours to spiritually micromanage, personal develop micromanage. Your expectation is your enemy. It's not
Yeah.
even them itself, like themselves. Like I think with you, my biggest lesson has really been like, no, um, let God, let God develop you.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily worry about your friend changing.
Yeah.
Let God
Totally.
develop you. When you change, you'll see them different. When you
Yeah.
change, you'll have a heart of forgiveness, compassion.
Mhm.
I think in my own strength, compassion was being, it was hard to find
Y-
it. Because I
Lord,
still
yeah.
wanted you to serve me in certain ways.
Jesus.
And serve me, meaning I wanted you to fit the mold of what I wanted you to be
Right.
for
Yeah.
me. And you
100%.
are Sabrina, you are the Lord's. You're not
Yeah.
mine. You're my friend, but you're the Lord's daughter. And
Yeah.
your personal development is not mine to be offended by or not be offended by. I mean, yeah, we talk about our offenses and we talk about what's going on or whatever, but I think even offenses can be a prison in friendship, because
100%.
if you are not appeased in a particular kind of way, you'll hold on to it until that person can pay you back.
Yeah.
And that's very demonic. And
Yeah.
you know how I am. So we talk like this all the time.
Right. 100%.
We
This is
are
a
like,
normal.
when the thing is our deep didn't happen like in the beginning of our friendship. Our
Mm-mm.
deep didn't have happen often, but when it started happening, we recognize that that is when we feel the most alive in our friendship, when
Yeah.
we are going deep with each other,
Yeah.
right? So I was talking to you through my emotions and my feelings, and I was like, no, like, no, there's something here. Like, I actually love engaging with her in a very safe space, in a very
Yeah.
safe way, and I think it was just not holding on to these offenses that were turning our friendship into an idol of like, I want her to be this, and if she can't be this, I'm gonna guard myself, I'm gonna distance
Yeah.
myself, I'm gonna treat her different. And those things are things that really have to be dealt with in friendship.
Yeah. I feel like we dealt with a lot of that. And I think that the other part is like, I, by nature, was a person that didn't always allow people to process. And
Yeah.
so I always wanted to bring it up. Like, okay, if something felt wrong or if something's off, it take nothing for me to apologize. Like, oh, my bad, bro. I
Oh yeah,
didn't
you
realize it.
literally told
Like,
me conflict is your something. You're like, no, I
love
don't run.
language.
I
Didn't I?
run
I
towards
remember I used
con.
to say,
I
people,
run towards conflict. People like, you were like, conflict don't bother me. I run towards it. Like,
yeah. And I think it's because I saw so many
yeah,
people, I saw so many hidden, like, things in relationships where people didn't have tough conversations. And so I think that I grew a very unhealthy
yes,
affection for conflict and not being afraid of running toward conflict. And it was also because in other areas of my life, I wasn't as heard when I didn't. So I took it. It's like you find the place where you can control of like, well, no, I'm going to make sure that this person knows that I don't feel this kind of way, or I'm trying to, and I remember I feel like I apologize all the time. But
yes, you did.
I didn't know, and I remember my mom used to be like, stop always apologizing. But I'm like, I didn't know how to fully communicate, but I know that my heart's intention it's never been malice. It's never been ill intention. So when my heart didn't come out well, the only thing I know to do is to apologize. And then I remember, we're going to pivot a little bit, but I remember like where COVID happened, the
Facts.
shutdown happened, or like around that time. And so I feel like when our friendship started to anchor a little bit closer, it was on the phone. It was FaceTime. We were
Like
on
20, I
FaceTime
would
for
say
hours.
2018,
Was that
because
when? 2018?
2018,
Yeah.
2019,
Why do I
it
keep
was right
saying that? Because
before
2020
I
you
had
moved.
King.
It was
Yeah.
before. Yes. Okay. Yes. It was before you had King. The shift came during the
Because
COVID
that
season. But
year of my life was incredibly wild.
yes, I remember, because I remember we're not gonna go into what happened, but I just
Yeah.
remember you called me because something happened. And I
Yeah.
remember that phone call anchored me in your life in a different way, because I was like, oh, she trusts me. And it was a space that I always wanted. I wanted mutual type of friendship and all of these things. Like, it was something that I wanted. But I remember that moment. And from there, it was like, okay, we're really called to walk with each other. And I feel like there was a season where we would be on the phone. It maybe them FaceTime. If the walls could talk and hear them
Ooh,
FaceTime conversations,
my God.
Jesus, praise the Lord.
Right?
It was so much laughter, joking, deep
Two married
conversation.
women, two mom, almost mom, like,
Yes, and
but
just women who
we went real
cared.
deep into our marriage conversations, into our
That's all we
motherhood.
used to talk
That's
about.
always that was always our connection point, if
Always.
nothing else.
Hashtag
Like,
wives
we
that
went
care.
really deep into how we wanted to feel as wives because we had similar hearts, how we wanted to
Hmm.
be as moms because we had similar hearts.
Yes. So I feel like we talked a lot about that, but I
Yeah.
want to move into when things pivoted, because I feel like from my perspective, I remember it was like, okay, this is my dog, like best friend, all right. And then it was like, I was like, okay, this is getting too much for me. I'm like, okay, this is too intimate. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. And then I remember feeling myself close in, and it was because, and I'm going to talk about this more in the friendship episode, I didn't do well in person. But what I remember is, I'm trying to think, I remember this is when we're going into the topic of like idolatry, and this is when I was like, she's holding more space than she needs to hold, and
Wow.
I don't think I realized it. You moved to Texas,
Yeah.
which the Lord had already, I was not surprised. I
Yeah.
was annoyed, but I was not surprised.
For sure.
Because I was like, God, why would you do this? Like, and
Yeah.
so there, because I was still dealing with my own rejection and my own abandonment, there
Mm.
was a lot of that surfacing because so many people in that season was leaving. And so I
Everybody.
think that, I think all of everybody was like, all right, we out. And I'm like, what do y'all mean? You're like, I'm still here. But what I remember is,
Everybody meaning like the top 5 people in your life. Like
yeah, like,
not in the.
like super close people to me. And then I was having relationship issues, not in my marriage, but just like outside relationship issues too, where I was just like, God, everything is shaking, which now I know that God was coming to shake the tree of idolatry, and that's when it started.
Ooh.
And I
Yeah.
remember you moving, and I remember before that we were meeting. I think we were like meeting on Zoom about business. Like it was just like our one of how we always used to just brainstorm, but it was more intentional. And you were like, I'm gonna help you, whatever, whatever. And then you moved to Texas and your life completely pivoted. Now, hear me when I say this. This is why you have to pray for your friends, and you have to know the season that they're in. You have to talk to God about your friends,
Yeah.
and not just about how you want to be served. Because I remember then we couldn't
Absolutely.
meet anymore. I don't
Yeah.
remember there being a conversation first that we weren't going to be meeting anymore, but I knew your life had completely took a turn in general. And I remember feeling like it felt gut wrench. It was just like, bro, what just happened? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, what did I do? And I go inward. So if anything changes, it's always
You
like, Serena,
internalize
dang,
it.
what did you do? Did I mess up something? Did I like offend her? And I was like, dang, we always talked about business, but now she's starting a business. Maybe she feels like I'm using her or abusing this space and relationship. So then it put me on. Then I went to eggshells. Then I was like, okay. Because I would always be like, hey, sorry to bother you. Like, I wanted to ask you a question about this, because it was a space that I was always asking a question in, and it was just normal. So then I went through this space where I was like, I realized that I wasn't creative apart from Kendra anymore,
Mm.
because my creativity centered around the friendship, because it was like the safest space that I was able to talk about it, and I was brainstorming, it was back and forth. And I felt like there was a measure of where I ended up, they call it enmeshment, where I ended up enmeshing my like, oh, but if I put this design out, like, is she gonna like this one though? Like,
Hmm.
oh no, but let me ask her, like, dude, what if this is over here? Even though I was creative and doing things before, my whole identity of my creative lane shifted, and it was only a part. So when our relationship separated, and y'all, this is probably the first time I'm saying some of this stuff. I don't know if she's hearing it for the
It
first
is.
time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I recognize, and I think it's because the season of life I'm in, dealing with the spirit of idolatry as a whole, it's all coming up. And I just didn't feel like my creativity was good standing beside yours anymore,
Mm.
unless you would put an input in it. I wanted you to be like, I'm like, man, if I made a shirt, I'd be like, well, do you like this design? Because I wanted you to like it. Even if 100 other people liked it,
Hmm.
it didn't matter. I was like, but I want Kendra to like it, because
Wow.
this, I know your creative eye. I know like what she does. Like, and I've always been I've always been a fan
Yeah.
of your work, of your creativity, always. So I feel like that when I started realizing that, I wouldn't have called it idolatry then. I just labeled it jealousy, or I just labeled it comparison. I didn't know the root of it. I just gave it a label, and I was like, well, I think I just feel by myself, or like, I no longer have a space in her life, or well, maybe it was just that season, and like, people move, because I also had never went through that. And so I feel like that's when I started to recognize that this is being made bigger than God. I just didn't know how to deal with it at the time.
Wow.
I'm like, that was a lot. Sorry. Not sorry.
No. I think this is like the point of podcast.
Yeah. It's like, well,
Like,
come to sit on my couch.
um, I So, because the backstory of that, what you just said, is like when I didn't even know that God was calling me into like the creative agency brand development space, I still to this day, like, I know that it's always been in me because it's what I've
Yes,
always done.
always.
But when I started brainstorming with you, you were the only person that told me I can turn it into a business. Everybody else just let me create for them, let me do things for them. And that's just how Kendra flows. When
Mm-hmm.
Kendra's in a room, yeah, of course we're
Yeah,
gonna put her in the creative corner because she's
yeah,
going
because
to
she
take
gonna work.
whatever
Yeah,
idea we have and we're going to turn it into to something.
use your
You're
anointing.
the person that God used in my life to actually show me that no, someone should be paying you for the level of expertise that you have. Like, yeah,
Wow.
love you, but I want to sow into you in this way. So there was a space with you that I was like, oh, this is a business. Oh,
Mm,
this is what it is. Cause I remember like there was another ministry you were doing, cause that's where I started like practicing
mm-hmm.
more of like intentional marketing design
Yeah.
inside of the ministry that you had.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were saying that this could be a business, like that's what I would do. I would talk to you about your ministry. I would talk to you about what the Lord was calling you to do. And then you would talk to me about my business and potentially what it would be. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the backstory of like where it started. Even though, MySpace, I was a designer, Tumblr, I was designing, Microsoft Word, I was designing logos. I had always done it with you. It was you showing me the value of what it could be in the marketplace.
Wow.
And so when I moved, the distance, I mean, first of all, that was a very heavy time in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Outside of business, my
Yeah.
dad had passed away.
Quickly after you
My
moved.
husband couldn't find a job. Financially, we were struggling. We were living in someone else's home.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very dark time in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
the distance, and I know you said this, but it literally was not personal to our
Right.
friendship, to
Right.
what I felt about you. It wasn't personal to our connection. It was just, I separately was in a completely new space, new world, and I didn't know what the Lord was doing.
Yeah.
And so I needed to be with him so that he can show me, like, this is what I'm doing in your life. And at the time, I had never been in a space where I just selfishly was like with the Lord. Like, I
Yeah.
always made space to be on the phone, to be available, to not just with you, but with
Yeah.
anybody in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was probably the most available person anybody could have ever known. Not just me, but my husband,
Mm-hmm.
our family together. We were the house
Yeah.
that people brought their kids to. We were the house that we babysat when we didn't even have money. We made sure that everybody was taken care of.
Wow.
And when we moved, that was the first time I was like adjusting to this new place with
Mm.
this new assignment
Yeah.
with new people or nobody at all because there was nobody here. And so at the time, I didn't communicate through that. I
Yeah.
didn't communicate because I didn't have language. Like,
Right. Right.
God was literally transforming my entire life before my eyes, and I did
Mm-hmm.
not know it. I
Yeah.
just thought, this man, I don't know what you're doing, Lord, but I know you're doing something. And so
Yeah.
that's when I started spending time with the Lord heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And in our friendship, we just stopped communicating
Mm-hmm.
and we just stopped really talking like we did in, the previous season. And so we didn't really know what was happening. We didn't really know what was going on. We just knew that we weren't connecting a whole lot.
Yeah. And I remember
So,
like your dad passing,
yeah.
and I remember being like, well, I'm just gonna keep texting when I feel led to text, and I'm not gonna look for her to respond because
Yes.
I don't know how a person would. I was with you the day before you left. Oh my gosh, it's hitting. I remember. I
Yeah.
remember because your dad didn't come, and I remember y'all like, okay, and Kevin like, well, we're gonna go pull up to your dad. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we're going to like, and I remember seeing you in the moment of it. And so when the news hit, because I think you text me to tell me,
Yeah.
I did hear from you.
Yeah.
I remember the weight I felt in the moment, and I'm like frustrated because I'm like, I can't show up. I can't show up physically
Right.
because now she's in another state. I don't know how to show up in this space because I've never had to. And I was already feeling all the abandonment, blah, 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 blah. And I remember being like, listen, Lord, I think that was the first time I think ever that I was like, okay, look, Lord, you're going to have to teach me how to put my feelings to the side so that I can authentically send messages, show up, whatever I need to do, however I can in this small way. So I remember I would just text you. Sometimes you responded. And I actually feel like you responded more than I actually thought you would respond because we
Yeah.
hadn't really been talking.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I think I ever realized that friendship from God was more meant for me how I can serve the person in front of me versus me just getting my needs met, because I started to pray. And as I started to pray, I started to feel the weight of your heart. And I'd never experienced that before, not
Yeah.
outside of my husband. And I was
Oh yeah.
like, so it made me start to, and I think, to be honest, I feel like those moments were the beginning of deconstructing so we could have later the idolatry conversation, because we couldn't have had it before. Because when I
Yeah.
started praying for you, I started to recognize the weight that you were under. And I can remember like it was yesterday because I was sitting on the side of my bed and I was doing something, and I felt this nudge to pull my phone and text you. And I think I said something like, it was basically along the lines of like, I love you, and anyone who doesn't understand the weight of your life right now and what God is doing in your life right now, they're not praying for you. And I remember it, I didn't have a whole lot of words. I just was like, and I want you to know that I'm praying for you. And I remember feeling like because I'm like super, sappy at times, and I can send a long drawn out message like, I love you and you mean the world to me, blah, 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 blah. But I
Yeah.
remember the Lord said, send this in specific. And that was when you responded back. And it was the simplest, like, I don't, you said something like, I don't have full words right now, but I just want you to know like the weight of what you just said, what it means to my heart, or something like that. And I think we didn't talk for much time after that. I just decided I'm going to take on the posture of, I'm going to pray, because I don't even know what the weight of that season felt like. I had never lost a parent.
Yeah.
I had never dealt with the uprooting and moving my whole life and removing everything that was normal. And so in that season, I feel like the Lord just started to, and I still wasn't perfect outwardly, but there was an inward work that God started to like do on the inside of me, of my responsibility in praying and the reason he put us in relationship. But I also remember not liking that position, because I was like, okay, I'm doing this and we don't get to talk. Like, I don't know how this, like, I don't understand how this is supposed to like work. But I now recognize hindsight is 2020. It was more about what God was cultivating in me so that he can teach me to be a friend, so that when we did connect, I could actually be a friend, because before I wasn't. I was in my, that helped me
Yeah.
when you pray, bro, listen, when you pray for someone, for real, pray for someone. Not pray real quick, but I'm saying like carry their heart before the Lord, carry their
Yeah. Pray
burden
more than
before
you're
the Lord.
offended.
Yet,
Because
like
most
when,
people are they're offended, but they're not praying for their friends.
and I was in that, and I think I said that to you. I said, I if I didn't say it to you, I said it. I posted it somewhere recently, and I was like, not everybody's called to walk with you in long seasons. And instead of focusing on being offended when you feel like your friend is switched up, if you pause long enough to
Yeah.
pray for that person, I'm telling you, the God who created her, the God who knows Kendra more than I know Kendra, the God who knows her in and out, her family dynamic, everything that is going on with her, he can see where he's taking her, what he's doing. And I cannot, when I go to talk to her, not going to talk to God, I started, let me talk to Kendra's father about her so I can figure out how do I need to posture so that in this moment I can show up better. I stopped making it about what I wasn't feeling, and I started to ask God, how do I show up? And he didn't give
Yeah.
me any practical nothing. The only thing he made me do was stay in his presence and bring everything that I was feeling before him. A lot of time I was either praying in the spirit, or if I asked her, I would start saying things like, how's your heart? How can I pray
Yep.
for you? Like, what do you need
Yep.
from me? And I remember you didn't always have an answer, because I feel like that was like a random question. You really didn't know much, I guess, probably like of what you needed. But that's when I feel like, for me, things started to take a turn. And I was like, oh, this is, and I think even after that, I would try to have like these deep conversations of like, let's have a heart to heart so we can just lay everything out. But I was trying to press it
Yeah.
sooner than I felt like being led by the time of the Lord.
Man. Yeah. I think when you are friends with people with like a weighty cause, you have to understand to whom much is given, much is required.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be times in your friendship where it will be like super proximity wise, will be close. And there might be times in the friendship where it might be more distant.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're always changing like the identity of the friendship based on what the Lord's doing in their individual life, the
Mm-hmm.
friendship will always go up and down, up and down, up
Yeah.
and down, because we see friends where it's like, oh, if you are best friends, you do this, you do this, you do this. We're not, are we doing the friendship things? Are we doing the connection things? And also, we are both married women. We both have
Yeah.
children. Like there are
Businesses.
so many businesses. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
so many different layers to why a friendship is, I guess, more available or more distant. And especially like I mean, when we would communicate through things like this, and you didn't bring this up a whole lot like during that time,
Yeah.
but like if I would ever have my little MIA moments where I just wanted to, you're not hearing from me.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would literally be like, just send me a voice note and let me know that you're okay. Like I
Blink
just
twice,
want to know
please.
that
My
you are
friend.
okay. Like, because I remember you telling me like you have suicidal background,
Mm-hmm.
and like there's moments where the enemy will like try to flip a thing to you, and
Mm-hmm.
like you just want to know that everything's good. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. It would
And
make you
so
really
I remember
nervous.
after I heard that,
Mm-hmm.
I was more intentional with the check-ins,
Yeah. Yeah. You got
because
really
that
intentional after that.
was me coming into your world. Like it wasn't just you coming into mine, but me coming into yours, of like I want to be more intentional with the way that I let Sabrina know that I'm here, and like I'm gonna tell you that I love you. I'm going to affirm you, because we're not spending a whole lot of time
Mm-hmm.
together. So when we do talk, we're talking for hours at a time. When we do,
Girl.
like, voice notes weren't a thing yet. So we were always texting.
Wow.
We were always like, on the phone at a time, and then it changed. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make sure that I was checking in with you, because like you said, friendship is not just about what you're getting, it's how you can serve your friend.
Yeah.
And we don't always see conversations like that, because a lot of conversations around friendship, like in marriage, are very selfish,
Self-centered. Yeah.
self-serving,
Mm-hmm.
self-gratifying, self-pleasing. And I'm just like, no. Like I think through this friendship, I know through this friendship, God has taught me to serve, and
Yeah.
to be more flexible than I thought I was. Like I thought I
Yeah.
was flexible. And the
And
Lord
I
was
thought
like,
I was
"No, not
vulnerable.
your flexibility.
Yeah.
Flexible through my spirit."
Yeah. It's like I thought I
So,
was vulnerable. And I was like,
oh yeah.
she always wants something else. I'm being vulnerable. I remember
Yeah, I was like,
I said, I talk to you about my business and I don't talk to anybody about my business. That's like the next thing after my kids. And you were just like, yeah, I mean, you do. You do. Talk to me about your business. And I remember
Sabrina
that
was like, I
conversation.
am trying. I give you my best vulnerability,
I'm
because
like,
nobody else gives
I'm giving you,
nothing. Like, if you don't think
listen.
this is anything, then you should see the way that I treat this person. And I was like, okay, so when we do X, Y, and Z, I feel more closer to you. I
Yeah.
feel like you're present with me.
And I was
If
like,
you are not doing these things, I feel distant.
and
And
I'm
so we
like,
had to start saying, like,
yes.
specifically, what is it that you are talking about? Like, because
Because I'd be like,
I,
give me an example. And you're like, well, I mean, okay, but like, I'm like, no, I need an example because I don't understand.
No, that
Then
was
you,
also me being very like, I think I had an expectation too of like
hmm
vulnerability had to look a certain way in
yeah,
all cases. Like every relationship is different. Like
for
you're not
sure.
gonna get in one that you get in another. Like there's everybody is their own person, and every relationship you have with that person is going to look different. The flow of it, the feel of it, the
hmm
everything. And I
Yeah.
think what I was doing is like I'm like no, like okay. So for instance, if we see each other and I know that something's clearly going on, like I know something's going on with you. I know you're dealing with something that you just right now do not want to address. Instead of saying, hey, like for me, vulnerability is, hey, right now I'm dealing with something and I don't really have the words for it, but eventually we're going to talk about it. I don't want you to take it personal. I'm a little antsy right now. I'm a little distant right now, processing right now, but we'll come back to it because you're letting me in presently on how you're doing.
hmm
At the time, you would let me in on the aftermath of what happened.
hmm
So in like real time, it was a struggle. And so vulnerability for me
I
is
thought I
not
was doing
really
so good hiding it. Wow.
you because we're both prophetic.
Yeah. So you feel, I didn't think
We
about
can
that.
feel it, but
Yeah.
we're not talking about it. So we're trying to let's listen to music or let's move on. And it's like,
Yeah. You're like,
bruh,
but I feel the elephant in
you
the room. His
I
trunk
feel
is
the
right here.
atmosphere. And so now, you have, I mean, and we light years have grown
Oh,
in the
girl.
sense of like, no, even before the podcast started, you're like, girl, I don't know how to work this system. I need to figure it out. Or
Y'all.
I'm working it. Like, just give me some time. I need to breathe. Like, I need to breathe. I didn't see you take your breaths. I didn't see you say, I'm struggling in real time.
Yeah.
Cause in the moment, it was
Yeah.
always like, we're gonna push past it. And then afterwards, you would send me a long old text message talking about, girl, I know that was kind of
Oh
awkward.
my gosh,
I'm so
y'all.
sorry that I was going
Y'all.
through it. I'm like, why didn't you tell me I was in the car with you? I could have
Y'all.
prayed with you. We could have done something else. Like, I'm not a super big needy person or friend.
Yeah.
I can literally be in the same room doing nothing. And because
Chilling.
we have connection and we're present with each other,
It's enough.
it fuels me. Like that's how I
Yeah.
get fueled by presence. I don't get fueled by materials. I don't get fueled by gifts. Presence, I'm with you, you're with me. That's how I get fueled.
Yeah.
And so we didn't know that about, and I couldn't even articulate that then.
No, ma'am.
I was horrible at articulating
Ooh,
what I
Jesus. Now I'd be like, Kendra,
now I'm
all
an
right.
over communicator.
I'm like,
Like
no, I get it. We're good. We're good. We're good. And I think because I was the
yeah,
over communicator, I remember
you
like
were.
I was always, because one of the pastors in my life, he was like, it always like err on the side of over communicating or whatever. So I always
Yes,
would, but it would be like a long text message drawn out like every single time I got in the car because I didn't know how to do it in person and I was afraid of rejection and showing my
yes,
emotions. So I had to do it afterwards because I still wanted to be authentic to what I was feeling, but I didn't know how to do it in person.
yeah.
And so now I'd be
Baby was
like,
in that text message 5 minutes after you leave. We are at a restaurant.
I'm
We
telling
like,
y'all,
what is
it
this
would be
awkward? What
quick.
is this weird? What is this feeling? Okay, you get back in the car, you drive away. Now I see this text message. It never failed.
It and every friendship will tell you the same thing. Like when I leave a
Yes,
friendship, everybody, it was the same way with everyone. Now I am healthier in my, because I had a prototype then, and so the prototype was on.
yes.
But when I got in the car, the prototype is off. Now I'm left with the
That was your safe space.
solitude. Yeah, I'm left with solitude, and you're left with the reality of the actual emotions that you're feeling.
Right.
Um, and all of it didn't always need to be communicated. Probably 90% of the text message I sent didn't need to be sent. It needed to
Yeah.
be processed with the Lord so that I can work it through. But what I would do is, because I was a people pleaser, I did it with people, which is weird because I was mean and I was a people pleaser. It's like, baby, the two don't match. It did, none of it did. All of the spirits was stupid. So call it what it is. I needed
And,
deliverance. Okay. It
and
was
that's the thing. I was
demonic.
gonna say, and when you're
It
in
was
a friendship with people that haven't gotten like walked through deliverance yet, baby, you will literally manifest on your friend and not even know, and then
easy.
blame the friend. But the
That there's
Bible,
something that's in you, like
we
that you
don't
just need
wrestle
to
against
deal
flesh
with.
and blood.
Yeah. And
But
it's
why do we
not,
guard our hearts with each other when we need to be wrestling against this demon
yes,
that is literally trying to pit us against each other?
and it's not even like, it's not even always like this like the way people talk about deliverance. Sometimes it's like it's not a person you need to be dealing with right now in general. I feel like in that season I had no
Yeah.
business trying to be pursuing friendships in general. The Bible talks about you want to have friends, you have to find yourself friendly first. I was not in that season. I did not like people,
And
but
you would
I
say
didn't like being alone.
you
So it
would
was
declare that out of your mouth so
all
much,
the
like,
time.
"Oh, I don't like people.
I
I'm
and
good."
my declaring was, it was very true. I did not like people, and I am not an ex. I am very charismatic, and
Yeah,
there is an anointing of influence on my life. So when I walk in a room, there I have a gathering anointing. I know that now.
yeah.
So it makes people think that I just automatically wanted people to be around me.
You're
by
extroverted. It makes
by
people think you're extroverted.
and by nature I am not. In
No.
my actual, I am, I have a low ticking clock, buddy, and when that clock starts to tick, it starts to go off. I'm like,
When Sabrina starts humming and messing with her hands, baby, you got 10 minutes to wrap it up.
Kendra, Kendra texted me the other day. Tell him what you told me. I said, I do what?
Baby. Because I posted on my Facebook, what's something that people assume about you that they often get wrong? And Sabrina was like, that I'm an extrovert. Because, baby, the minute she could tell anybody she is not an extrovert, she would tell them because
I'm
you wear
not.
big hair. You have bold clothes. You
Mm-hmm.
love fashion. You
Mm-hmm.
can work a room very well, but that does not mean that it's fueling you and not taking away from you. So that's the difference. Extroverts get fueled by a lot of people around them.
Yeah.
Introverts typically get fueled in their alone. And,
In solitude.
ambiverts
Yeah.
are both things sometimes. And even
Which I
though we don't
probably would.
identify as these things,
Yeah, no.
they
But there's
are
a natural being.
psychological, like
Yeah.
there's psychological reasoning behind how we get our fuel and where we kind of feel more depleted. And so you were like, maybe that I'm an extrovert because let's listen.
Leave me
I
alone.
got my clock, it starts ticking. I said, yeah, because when you start humming songs and
Mm.
playing with your hands, I know I better wrap it up. And you were like, wait,
I said,
what? I hum? I said,
huh?
you said, well, what's the song? It's not necessarily one particular song. You'll just be like, like maybe you'll speak in tongues.
Get me da 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 out of here, please. It's
You be
like,
like, yeah, so it's time to go. Like in public, I feel like you're more in a rush to leave, but like when you're
girl,
in your space,
we
you
good.
have more of a like, okay, I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
like if I'm
yeah,
in your house, you're like obviously
yeah.
it's a good. Yeah, I don't know if in your mind you were like, girl, when she about to leave? Because I
No,
want to be. But in your home, it was like different. But like public spaces,
yeah.
I did notice like you were more like aware of the time, aware of like what we were doing. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
just like us
Who's
getting lost.
around?
Who's around?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably more like that now. In
Yeah,
any
yeah.
time
I
of life.
think it has reversed.
For sure. And I mean, I'm still a very great host. I still get fueled by
Oh yeah.
people. I'm still like, I can be in settings, but the way that I find my recharging alone now,
Mm-hmm.
in my 20s, I was not this way. And my
Yeah.
recharging alone is me being with the Lord.
The
I'm not
Lord.
really alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
For sure.
yeah, I don't like you for sure. Like, we are different in that way too. Like when
Mm-hmm.
we're out in public, you're like, okay, I gave you my hour.
Like,
Me, I'm
all
like, we
right.
spent an hour with each other. Like,
I'm like, Kendra, don't bring it up. Just let it. Just let it. I'm like, don't get awkward. Let's just let it happen. Remember when we? Okay, bro. Remember when we? Do you remember what I'm about to say? When we were taking the
no,
pictures and
baby,
you
I
had
don't know.
and you kissed my cheek. We were
Oh
down.
my god,
It that
I
bro.
be
I'm telling you.
forgetting. I be having my moments, and then I forget. I'm
And when
like,
you were like, sorry, not. You're like, it's fine. We're having fun. It's okay. And I was like, okay,
what?
let's go. Okay, or we can go eat. All right, let's go.
Okay,
I'm
It's
listen,
like,
just
y'all. I know the episode is getting good, and I know you feel like I'm right in the middle and I'm cutting you off, and the commercial came at your favorite. I am sorry, but I'm not sorry. we will see y'all next week for part 2 of this episode with Kendra on idolatry of friendship and all of those things. Listen, you already know. If you don't know, if you're first time here, I want you to know that you were worthy then, you are worthy now, you are worthy, period. And you are deeply known, seen, and loved by God. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And I will see y'all next week on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Peace out.